One of the most common questions that I get asked when people are talking to me about homeschooling is they want to know my story. They want to know how I got into it, why I'm homeschooling, and kind of what drew me to this lifestyle for my family. So I want to share today just a little bit of info about who I am, my story with homeschooling, and what drew us and our family to this lifestyle, and a little bit of what that lifestyle looks like for us. So I come from a family of 6 children. I am the second oldest, and we had kind of 2 late babies in our family. So I was 11 when my brother was born. 4 of us are close, and then I was 11 when my brother was born, and I was 16 when my sister was born. So my sister was only 3 when my son was born, which was super fun. They're really close, but it's a little weird sometimes hearing him call her auntie when they're so close. Anyways, so I was homeschooled myself through most of my growing up years. I went to school here and there to try it for like a semester in, I believe, grade 2, and then I tried it again in grade 6 for a year when my mom was pregnant with my brother, and that was a super rough pregnancy, and so she needed a break. And then I went to school for half of grade 10 and then 11 and 12 at the public high school, and I graduated from high school. So I was homeschooled for most of it, but I graduated from a public high school so that it would be easy for us to get a diploma. In today's day and age, that's less of a concern because there's so many ways for homeschool kids to get a diploma and to, make it while they're doing school at home. So there's a lot more flexibility. But in my time, which now is becoming more of a time, it's not like it was yesterday, it was harder, it was a lot more challenging to get a diploma from home and to get into college or university if you did not have a GPA or some sort of a record behind you. So because of that, I went to public high school, and that's where I graduated from. So my experience with homeschooling was awesome. I'm very close to my siblings. My older sister and I are incredibly close. My younger brothers and I are close. I had such a close-knit family relationship because of that, and that really drew me to homeschooling. I always wanted to be a teacher when I grew up, so I was very drawn to the aspect of homeschooling just because I had seen the fruit of it and I knew the value in it, and I wanted to do it. It was fun. I wanted to now do it to my own children. I wanted to homeschool them. I loved the curriculum that we used. I loved being home with my family. I loved really every single aspect of it. Getting curriculum, going to curriculum fairs. My mom was in some curriculum fairs kind of selling or promoting some things, and going with her was my favorite thing. I loved everything about it. And so when I grew up and graduated, that was always kind of a goal in my mind that I wanted to homeschool my kids. It was going to happen. I graduated when I had just turned 16 because I was advanced. And part of that was because we moved provinces when I was about 8. So the cutoff date for school in one province was December 31st, and in another province it had been, for me, where we were, February, end of February. So my birthday's in February. So when I moved here, I was already a year ahead just because of the cutoff. Now, then, when we put me into school, I was just advanced. I was more advanced. I was just one of those keener kids that loved school a ridiculous amount, and school was very easy for me. And so to challenge me, and so I would not be bored, my parents put me 1 grade ahead. So I really only was ever bumped 1 grade, but when I moved, it ended up looking like I had bumped 2 grades. So I turned 16 in February and I graduated in June. So I was young. And while I loved being homeschooled, I did not so much love my school experiences. In grade 2, I remember being just not understanding the way things were done and missing my family like crazy. My parents had tried just putting 2 of us in because we wanted to go so bad, and I cried every day. So that experience was pretty negative for me. They ended up pulling me out when my brother got pulled out as well, and then I was just too lonely. My grade 6 experience, I was bullied like crazy, and it was a Christian school, so surprise, surprise, not the kind of thing you would expect, but I swear my class was like specifically just just a rougher class. It's like people thought if we send our kids here, maybe they'll get fixed or so. I don't know. Anyways, it was a negative experience for me for sure, and I did not have the self-confidence to match my advanced grade level. And so while my mind was there, my maturity was probably there too, honestly, but my confidence was not, and in myself and my security in who I was. So I was quite insecure, and I was small, tiny, short little person, and yeah, so that was a negative experience for sure. And then high school was a total negative experience. I felt like a fish out of water. I can still feel those same feelings. Going halfway through grade 10 was awful. I was a massive public school in Kelowna. So I don't know if anyone's familiar with Canada, but in BC, that's one of the bigger cities. And our school, it's like a graduation class of like 1,000 kids. So that was 1,000 kids that had known each other all the way through, and I didn't know it all. They all had their friends. It was a rough school. And so there was a lot of, drugs and smoking and drinking and talk about all sorts of different things that I had been very sheltered from. Not that my parents didn't talk to me about stuff, but they didn't talk to me about raunchy stuff. So there was a lot of raunchy stuff that I just wasn't even familiar with, and I knew kind of that it was so awkward for me, you guys. It was so incredibly awkward for me. The conversations that were brought up, the way that people talked, I really hated it, and I felt incredibly insecure at my age. One of the worst experiences was I was in Spanish class, and the stupidest thing that they do is go around and learn how to say your age, and they would go around the circle and say, okay, you have to say my name is, and I am this many years old. Well, of course, every kid in the classroom is the same age. They were all 15, and I was 13, and when it got to me, I lied about my age because I was so embarrassed. I just wanted to fit in, right? Because that's been something in my whole life, because I always have been in an older category than what I actually am. I had kids young, so then my friends were all older and I was younger. It's just always been a part of my life. And so I lied, and I just was too embarrassed. Remember, I'm a mouse, okay? I did not have the self-confidence. And my parents found out, and they made me go back to the class and apologize. It was horrifying. Horrifying. So it just was a tough experience. I did not have the confidence, and I struggled, and I went home for lunch a lot, and I had some friends that I hung out with, but it was not a great experience, and I did not enjoy it. I really did not, but I made it. I graduated, and that's a little bit of my story of kind of my past. So what happened was I met a man, and I got married, and we had lots of discussions about homeschooling, and he had gone to public school himself, and his kind of argument was, well, I went to public school and I turned out fine, so I'm not sure I like the idea of us sheltering our kids. And he struggled with the idea of homeschooling because he hadn't been very exposed to it, and he didn't think that public school was so bad. And so we kind of left it a little bit. My husband is a police officer. He is a federal police officer here in Canada. It's called RCMP. And so when he started working in the schools, his whole attitude towards homeschooling completely changed. And I remember one day he came home and he said, I think we need to talk about homeschooling. I don't want my kids going to the school. And it was just a total shift for him because of what he was seeing in the elementary schools, what he was seeing and the concerns that he had with what kids are being exposed to. And one of the things he said was, that is not the same school that I went to. Things have changed so drastically. And even since we had that discussion 10 years ago, oh my goodness, that's a while, to today, things have changed even more drastically. So for him, he became my greatest advocate in homeschooling our kids. And I just needed permission. Once I had permission, I was already ready to go. By the time my kids were 3 years old, I had bought the same curriculum that we had used growing up, and I was ready to go. And most of that curriculum is sitting in bins because it didn't work out so well for us. But I was excited. I was so excited to get started and determined, and I knew that basically living out a dream for me. I think if I had gone to school, I would have become a teacher. So it was using my gifts and something that I was passionate about and something I had great experience with as a child that I got to now walk out in my own with my own kids. So it was really an exciting thing for us. And throughout the past 6 years of homeschooling, I have learned a lot. The greatest lesson being I don't know anything because my kids are constantly challenging me, and I only really have experience with myself. I know what I was like to homeschool, and I have myself as an experience to go by, but the reality is that pretty much none of my kids are like me. And so with the exception of one, all of my children are so vastly different and learn differently, and they have different interests and passions and different strengths and different weaknesses. And so everything that I had as far as experience of homeschooling didn't actually really apply in any capacity. And so I came from this massive high to this great crash low where I walked into it with I know everything, and my first year was horrible because I realized I know nothing, and I needed to scratch everything that I knew because it wasn't helping me. It was actually boxing me in, and I needed to find what would work for my family. And that is an ongoing process, because what works for my family in one day, 1 month, 1 season, 1 year won't work again the next. What works for one child won't work for the next child. What works in one moment, really, like it shifts that quickly. And so I'm constantly having to reevaluate, reassess. I can't tell you how many times we've started a curriculum, used it, it's been great, and then all of a sudden it's not. And I am not afraid to ditch a curriculum. I'm not afraid to ditch a curriculum mid-year and start a new curriculum in that same grade, even though I know it's setting us back a little bit, because I am determined to find what is going to work the best for my children and what is going to work the best for me. So I've tried a lot. I've made so many mistakes. I have been frustrated. I've had whole seasons where we've unschooled because I felt like I was hitting a wall, and I've been busy or whatever else has happened in our lives. I have tried so many different homeschool styles until I came across the one that I felt confident in, and it's been a journey. It really has been a journey. And so all of this to say, this is who I am, Rebecca from homeschoolon.com. I am not a Pinterest perfect mom. I am not a homeschool mom that is out there that's been homeschooling for 20 years and can tell you all the answers. Even if I had been homeschooling for 20 years, the more that I learn, the more I learn that I don't know. I really don't think that makes a huge impact. I really think that the more you homeschool, the more you realize how much is out there and how everybody is so different, and you cannot impose one size fits all for any aspect, for curriculum, for scheduling, for routines, for hacks. All I can do, and all that I aim to do on my blog, is to take everything that I've learned and all my experience and all my messy moments and all of my great moments and just put them out there for you, and you can take what will work for you and leave that won't, because there's going to be those things. You're going to come across those things on my blog that you're going to love, and you're going to come across things that aren't going to work for you at all. And so that's my aim, that's my goal, and that is my piece. That's what I'm about. I'm about being authentic. I'm about being real. I'm about sharing the mess. I'm about sharing the chaos. And I am about having fun in the journey, not getting so bogged down with the stress of getting it all right, because in the meantime, while we're working so hard to get everything right, our kids are growing up. And I have already had moments where I've looked back on my journey and thought, man, have I wasted time. In some ways, someone would look at it and say, no, you haven't. You've found what works for you for curriculum. You've found schedules. You've found routine. You've learned so much. That's true. But I was so stressed with doing all those things that did I really enjoy it as much as I could have? So I want to enjoy it. Now I'm determined to enjoy it. I'm determined to, still aim for greatness, still aim for finding what works, still aim for pursuing my children's passions and interests and making it all those things. But I also primarily am focused on having fun with it and enjoying my children, because if I'm not enjoying my children, then why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? If they're not enjoying it and I'm not enjoying it, this is just not, it's not worth it. I want to enjoy my children because they are enjoyable. And so sometimes you have to look for it a little harder than other days. You know what I mean? But that's what I'm about. So hopefully, if you're new to my blog, or if you've been following me for a while and are kind of wondering, my story or why I'm talking about homeschooling, this is who I am. I have 5 kids, ages 4 to 10, and I am passionate about being real and not Pinterest perfect. It's definitely not me. If you want that, go search on Pinterest. There's lots of them out there. All right, you guys, go and have an amazing homeschool day. Drink lots of coffee or tea. I find that to be a staple in my home, and it makes a really big difference. So drink coffee and tea and enjoy your kids today. Enjoy homeschooling today because it is a gift. Homeschool on.